Okay, let's talk about consciously navigating big triggering topics.
Yes, it's something I find a lot of in my own personal life and clients I work with, trying to consciously navigate in what that means to us. So Bailey and I are going to explain that from our experiences. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Willow Shire. I'm a spirit artist. Bailey.
My name is Bailey Olivas. I'm a channel and a healing guide. You can find me on Instagram at Elysian Exchange 111.
So what is conscious navigation to you?
Conscious navigation is something that was brought to my attention during energy exchanging within interpersonal relationships, within my soul connections. I'm realizing the value in connecting with another person, in crossing paths with another person. And a part of that value is learning how to consciously navigate with another person instead of constantly being at odds. Just really coming to terms with the fact that the people that you're interacting with are truly your mirrors and are a part of your own creation. So that way you can work on mastery of self, and so that way you can be an example and guide to another who's maybe still in the process of learning what that means.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's a way of navigating through life with your personal relationships that allows you to grow and heal and understand what triggers you and heal those triggers, and also bring more peace of mind. That's the biggest thing, is when you can learn to consciously navigate with a person. Your friendships, your relationships, all of that strengthen more and have just more peace in their existence and the way they operate, because you're not fighting each other. As Bailey will say, it's you versus you say it better. I'm gonna mess up on it.
It's not you and I against each other. It's you and I against the problem. So this means we hover above what's going on and we look at it from an observational point of view, an awareness point of view. So typically when something happens where we're triggering the other, or we're both triggered, we think, you're doing this to me, or this is happening to me. We think it's a very isolated incident and it feels very personal. And yes, in that moment it is. But the value in consciously navigating is observing what's going on from a more conscious space, and that means from a state of awareness. So when you have the capacity to drop the ego and hover, float above thyself, and look at the topic at hand. Here's the topic, Will. This is the triggering topic. These are two people, and they're like, this is between us. No, we both need to hover above and observe the topic itself. Here's an example of that.
Let me just mention this too. This is also a heart, and it's about using your heart space, not like your mind or your lower chakras. You want to be using your heart space when you're consciously navigating, which will bring you more into alignment more with like the love frequency as you're speaking to people, rather than fighting with each other.
Right, because a lot of people, when they're heated and upset, they get into their head. They get into the ego, they get into the mental body, the emotional bodies. But really, we really need to be in the heart center. We need to understand what's going on. So it takes a lot of mastery to get to this space, right? Because you first have to work on mastery of your own emotions and recognize, I'm getting angry right now. How am I going to express that anger? You know, we all have things that we need to work on over the course of life. But as an example, like let's say Will said something that triggered me, and we're in the middle of talking about it. Instead of me saying like, you triggered me, you're hurting me, this is happening to me, I am to vocalize when I'm consciously navigating, wait a minute, I'm feeling triggered right now. Let's figure out why. You said something that triggered me in this way. This is how it feels. This is what's coming up for me. And instead of Will being like, well, I didn't mean to trigger you, I didn't say that with the intention of hurting you, defense, 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 Will put his defense down and say, okay, something's coming up for Bailey, right? And ask questions. How did this make you feel? Does this remind you of something that you've been through before? And then it's my job to kind of dig deeper and process, is this stemming from a place where the way he spoke to me reminds me of something that happened between my parent and I in childhood? Why am I feeling sensitive in this moment? And just really going within, and Will holding space, holding enough space for us to get to the bottom of it. And then in return, let's say me bringing up to him that I'm triggered in the first place, makes him feel like he needs to go into defense mode. Then we can talk about that. We can talk about why he's feeling defensive. Maybe because in his childhood, he was constantly called out for the way he speaks or his tone of voice or whatever. And instead of being like, I hate you, it's about, I hate what's going on. Can we figure out what's going on so we can move along and move past this?
Yeah, 100%. It's about operating in a way that when you, it takes two people. You know, one person will get triggered, and when that person gets triggered, they go into their, you know, it could be offense or defense, whichever it is, but it takes them having the awareness that they are triggered, and some people that's a struggle having the awareness that you're being triggered, but then the other person being able to have the awareness that they are triggering somebody and stepping in and saying, okay, wait, hold on. You know, one of the parties has to step back and say, okay, one either has to say I'm being triggered, or the other one has to say, I feel like you're being triggered, what's going on, type of thing. And then you just kind of navigate from there and go, okay, we're not fighting against each other. What is the core here? What is the issue? What is the trauma or the reason?
Why is it coming up to be cleared?
Yeah, why is it coming up to be cleared? You know, if you have issues with parents, siblings, past relationships, all that stuff, and we all do, you'll be triggered by things in those relationships. So like, there are things I have from past friendships that come up with Bailey and I and other friends and that sort of thing. And there are issues with relationships, issues with parents, children, all that, or when I was a child, not children, but when I was a child. And we consciously work on going, okay, I was triggered because of this. What is the piece? What is the reason for that?
Right. And keep in mind, the guides are saying, there may be instances where, like with my mom or with your mom, for example, there's no space to consciously navigate, because you do have to recognize on your own, maybe if the person that you're kind of not seeing eye to eye with is simply existing at a different state of consciousness or a different state of reality than you are. And in that moment, instead of becoming the teacher and educator and I know better, which is our ego still, our spiritual ego kicking off there, you have to surrender and honor and accept, you know what? If I've tried before to get my point across, and I already know and hold the awareness that this parent that I so desperately want to see me, or that I love so much, is not existing at my current state of reality or consciousness, which is perfectly okay, because that's where they're at on their journey. They are doing their part too, to surrender. And instead of go into teacher or attack mode, you surrender into yourself and you recognize that they too are God's source in expression. Recognize in that moment that you are consciously navigating by not forcing them to get to the space where you want them to be. right? So when you're in situations where you guys are both kind of at the same space in consciousness and state in reality, it's a lot easier to consciously navigate. But of course, there will be cases in life where it's not so easy.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with that 100%, and that when you're dealing with somebody who isn't operating from a level of conscious navigation, usually what I've experienced is this scenario where you get to a space where you're not fighting with the person, you're just asking questions. And even though you're saying, I feel this way, and you're asking them questions about them, they'll be so defensive and offensive and aggressive about it that they can't see a way to navigate. They don't understand that space. So a lot of people would go into that and just continue fighting with them. If you're in a space of consciously navigating, you won't fight with them. You'll ask the questions and they'll respond or react however they react. Typically that's a reaction when you're fighting and that sort of thing. And you're responding to them. There is a point in time where you have to sit down and say, okay, is this worth my energy to continue talking about this? And as she said, once you get your point across, once you say, this is how I feel, and trying to navigate with them through questions and that type of thing, there is a point in time where you just say, okay, this isn't worth the energy. And you don't necessarily say that to them. You just, in your mind, you realize this isn't worth my energy. I've made my point. It's time to close this out. And you just step back and move on.
Yes, and Spirit's saying, you can feel when there's an equal energy exchange. You can feel when you're at the same space and you both have the same goal in mind, which you genuinely, you can feel when you're in the heat of an argument, like let's say with your partner. And you can feel when you both have the same goal that you want to connect and work it out, right? Or you can also feel when one of you needs to walk away for a moment and take space. And it's important to remain in your heart center, like Will said, and remain connected to that. You can be absolutely furious with your partner, or your partner can be furious with you, and you can gauge whether or not it's going to be worth it to keep trying, or okay, let's calm down, let's take a few deep breaths, let's take some space in separate rooms, come back to this, or let's deep breathe together, let's initiate physical touch, maybe just hold hands for a second, deep breathe, cuddle, and then open the topic back up about what exactly is going on here. So it's important to know that when you're consciously navigating with someone, there's typically a balance of energy exchange. But when there's an imbalance, like you're the only one who wants to consciously navigate and you're talking at somebody and the person's at a lower state of energy and not giving you reciprocal energy, but more so coming at you with little digs or whatever, then okay, there's an imbalance here. I'm giving a lot, this person's giving a little sharp bits of energy. I need to walk away from this, and we need to have acceptance. That's the lesson in that moment. But in every opportunity to consciously navigate with an individual, another human being, there is a lesson within that. So whether the lesson is triggers are coming up for us, where are these triggers from? Why are they coming up? How can I clear them? Or the lesson being a pattern is repeating itself. How do I do things differently so we don't keep repeating this pattern? How do we do things differently so we don't keep repeating this pattern? Or the lesson being surrender and accept, right? There's always a lesson within your energy exchanges, no matter where someone is at their state of consciousness. There's always a lesson for you. And the lesson is how you respond to what's happening versus reacting. Really quick, it's okay, you're human, to have reactions sometimes. Sometimes you're just going to be a big feeler, a big feeling person. We don't always have mastery over our emotions. On the physical plane, on the human plane, we're here to feel. This is quite literally one of our gifts and senses, being in the physical form, being a human being, that we may not experience on other planets, in other spaces and time. Feeling is healing. Feeling is what gauges our vibrational state. If you feel anger, you're vibrating at the frequency of anger. It's a communication tool as well, so it's okay to feel. But the goal when you're working on mastery of self is to become a responder and have awareness of what you're feeling and where it's at in the body, and work it through the body and out of the body yourself in your own way, whether that's through walking, stretching, punching a punching bag, screaming in nature. You know how to work the energy in and out of your body rather than project it onto another human.
Yeah, and I would add to that earlier part about people being at different vibrations. That's where you're planting seeds. A lot of you know I talk a lot about that phrase, planting seeds. And that's what I mean is when you're at a different state of consciousness, what you're doing is planting a seed by the way you respond to them. And your response is how you plant the seed. So when a lot of you have asked me, how do I plant the seed? It's in the way you respond to somebody in a situation. You won't plant a seed by fighting with them. If you fight with them, it just digs people into the trench deeper and deeper. You plant a seed by being calm, stating how you feel, asking them questions, and just saying, like, plant-based eating comes up a lot where people are talking about that during holidays and stuff, and it's like, you can just say, have you ever heard that plant-based eating is healthier, or this or that, in different versions or ways? And that question will plant the seed. You don't have to say, this is what I want you to do, or this is a better way, because it's not better. Really, we're all on our own journey and at our own state of consciousness. But my parents, for example, big meat eaters. Stepdad was meat and potatoes, nothing else. They are eating far more plant-based, cut out most of the red meat and all that. And years ago, I was trying to tell them about they had health issues. I'm like, this will help you eat healthier. But because they're at a lower state of consciousness, my parents literally couldn't hear me say the question. Like, I would say the question, and then about, hey, what have you thought about eating healthier foods, vegetables, that type of thing? They would look at me and it was like it glazed over, and then they would go back to whatever topic they wanted to talk about, because they couldn't vibrationally understand or take in the knowledge, but the seed was planted. And then a year later, 2 years later, they start doing it on their own, not knowing that it was because I responded to them in a healthy way rather than fighting with them about the topic, and just let it go.
Right. And they're saying, in this case, with like plant-based foods, right? Let's say you're in a situation like the holidays, like Will just said, and your family's coming at you because you eat some type of way now and they eat differently. Instead of saying like, oh, this is so much better for you, it's better for your frequency, you guys have no idea, blah, 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 which we may all go through those phases with like understanding what works for us, because what works for me is not the same as what's going to work for you or what works for Will. This human experience is very it's full of choice, right? And we all can make different free will choices that will affect our human experience differently. So anyway, instead of projecting onto them the choice that best resonates with your frequency or with your experience, you can say in that moment, like Will is saying, planting a seed, you can say, I like eating this way, it makes me feel really good. How does your food make you feel? And they could say, oh, I love it makes me feel so good, or whatever. But maybe later on in the evening, maybe they start to notice, how they feel a little bit deeper, and maybe that question that you asked them at dinner will click. And maybe down the road they'll be like, Bailey said she likes eating those Brussels sprouts, they make her feel good. I'm going to try to implement Brussels sprouts into my meal next time. Like, it's not going to be conscious, but it may happen down the road. So instead of just saying, like, I eat this way because it's better for me, it's better for the planet, it's better for my frequency, and you should too, or else you're going to be in a lower frequency. You can say, I eat this way because it feels good. You should try it. Or how does your food make you feel? And then leave them with that. And it can move mountains down the road. Greater mountains than trying to force somebody else to see things from your perspective.
Yeah, and I would add to that is you don't always have to use your voice either. One of the things I did was when I started eating healthier is my mom made Christmas dinners and they were brown. I called them brown dinners. Every food is brown. I went over and I'm taking my own food, and I took curry, which curry is a very colorful, plant-based, vibrant, has a lot of different smells to it. And I ate curry while they were eating their regular dinner. And it was a big contrast just by taking a dish and showing, like, this is what I'm eating and this is what you're doing differently, but not saying, like, you need to eat this way or you need to do this or do that. Or I just took a dish over. And so you also help people just by, and this doesn't...
Providing an example.
Yeah, providing an example. And this doesn't apply just to plant-based eating. This is just an example. But you help people by showing. You don't have to say a word. Oftentimes, those of you in families who are lower consciousness, if you say something, that's going to trigger them and create a fight, defense, all that sort of thing. So you start showing to begin with and just making it part of the normal environment that when you're around, this is how you operate. You're bringing what's authentic to you, and they see that, and then they start going, oh wait, let me try that. That's not brown. That's colorful. What is that? Can I see what that is? And showing them there are ways that are different that they can try to see if it enhances their life. And that goes with any topic. Just showing people. That's why we talk about reaction versus response. When you respond, you're showing somebody how to operate. When you react, you're just reacting to trauma and things that need to be cleared, type of thing.
Yeah, when you react, you're expressing your emotions very physically. And that happens. It's a part of being a human, but it's also something you can work on mastery of, so that way you're not giving away all that energy and your power, and instead you're harnessing that energy and you're working it out of the body in a more productive way. And you have healthier energy exchanges with those who you are interpersonally connected with, relationship-wise, all relationships. And yeah, we talked about plant-based, but, you know, going back to like what Will is saying about providing an example. Let's say you're fighting with your partner, or you're fighting with a friend about something, and you can provide an example just by saying, like, hey, I'm noticing triggers are coming up. I'm gonna go for a walk really quick. I will come back and we can talk about it. And giving that reassurance of, like, I'm gonna come back, right? Because the person might have abandonment wounds that get triggered by you saying, I need to take space, because no one's ever taken space from them, right? Giving that reassurance, but setting the example of walking away, literally doing it, and then that plants a seed for them next time to realize, wait a minute, I'm getting triggered. I need to take a minute.
Yeah. The other thing I would add too is that consciously navigating the longer you wait when there's a trigger that comes up, the longer you wait to consciously navigate it with somebody, the harder it is to navigate with them. You're better off operating in that moment and trying to consciously navigate. So, like, they take a walk, and then when you come back, you talk about it right away. Like, you don't wait 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 months. It just makes it worse the longer it goes on, because people stew and they get, you even lose track of the original reason you were triggered and that sort of thing. So it's important when that type of thing happens to see if you can talk about it in that moment when it happens. And it's okay for people to take space, go for a walk and all that, just to calm down and process. But the sooner you can clear it, the better, just the easier the conversation goes, the more effective it is, that sort of thing.
And keep in mind, Spirit's saying, well, it's coming up for us to both have awareness of what's going on and to clear it. It's not your responsibility to fix or heal it. It's not the person involved's responsibility to heal this for you, or it's also not your entire responsibility in that moment to fix or heal it. It's just simply awareness of what's going on, awareness of what this mirror is teaching me, right? Every exchange we have is mirroring something to us, even if it's like a really shitty exchange, like someone's rude to you in line while you're going to get a coffee. What is that mirroring back to you? It's just mirroring back an opportunity for you to practice patience, or for you to snap at them, for you to practice empathy and recognize that, you know what, they're in a terrible mood right now, but I empathize because maybe something terrible happened to them earlier this morning. That doesn't mean you should take it. It just means you step back for a second and recognize not everything is happening to you, but just be an observer of what is happening, and you decide whether or not it completely affects or shifts or warps your reality or your energy. The value in these triggers coming up and our awareness of these triggers is so that way we can keep track of them and clear patterns and heal personally on our individual time.
Yeah, it's not our responsibility to heal people. A lot of us feel in the beginning as we're on this journey that we want to help people, we want to heal them, but ultimately they have to take responsibility for themselves, and the only person you're ever responsible for is yourself, your own healing and how you respond. And so that's the biggest key, is it's your choice how you respond to people. And even when they're aggressive and offensive, you don't have to give that energy back. You can be quiet, you can, ask your questions, say your point, and just fade away if you need to, walk away. But just always remember, you're not responsible for anybody's healing, your partner, your family, your friends, any of that type of thing.
Yeah, and quickly before we end it, I just want to give a personal example. I have a friend who gets really confused and triggered and upset when I take great lengths of space in between communicating. I personally feel things very deeply, and when I'm going through stuff on a personal level, I go deeply within, I go inward, and I close everybody out. That is my response to being triggered within my own personal reality, my own personal experience. But on the outside, those who want to be in contact with me, those who are not related to the personal triggers I'm dealing with, will then say like, hey, you're triggering me, you're ghosting, you're gone for weeks, why aren't you communicating, why aren't you telling me what's going on? And in the past with this friend, which this has happened to me with quite a few friends, so it's something I'm working on, is communication as to where I'm at and what I'm dealing with, and realizing it's safe to communicate with people outside of my reality about, hey, here's what's going on, I'm gonna take some space, instead of just going into hiding mode all the time. Anyway, and that's what these friends are teaching me. But this friend will say, you're like really triggering me, you're ghosting, I just wish you would reach out and let people in, let me help you, But what I recognize, because I know this friend very deeply, is I recognize that, first of all, I'm not communicating well enough with the people who do care about me, what's going on, and communicating my need for space. But also, in the mirrored response, I know that this friend, who I love very, very much, has abandonment issues related to a parent taking great space from them, vanishing, not explaining why they're not communicating with their child. And so I've been able to express to that person consciously, I think I am manifesting in a way that's triggering abandonment wounds related to women that you have. And then I'm also manifesting in a way that is bringing to my attention that I need to be a better communicator. So see how it applies on both sides? I'm triggering this person's wounding from childhood, and that's why they're reacting the way that they are. And they're triggering me to be better, to grow, to be more vocal, and not hide. So here's a lesson on both sides. And instead of saying, I'm gonna sit here and fix this and we're gonna heal this, we both just accept what has come up. I take the space that I need, this person takes the information, my feedback, and then we go within and then we do that healing on our own personal time. But this is an example of conscious navigation in my perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think I have anything to add.
No, I think we covered it. I mean, if anybody has any questions, leave them down below.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that if you like these videos and you're interested in supporting Bailey and I'm a spirit artist. I do spirit art readings. You can find those on my website, awakenwithwillow.com. I'll put that in the notes. And then how can they support you?
I'm on Instagram at Elysian Exchange 111. My website is baileyolivas.com. My intuitive offerings and services are on there. They're paused right now, but I'll put the link back in my bio on Instagram soon. And when that's back up in my bio, then you'll know that my readings are back open again. But for now, you can just support me by watching these videos, leaving comments down below, and staying connected to Will and I. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Love you all. Grateful for each and every one of you.
Lots of love.